Welcome to this video about the tragic events at Le Paradis during World War II. This quiet village in France became the site of a devastating massacre in May 1940, where members of the 2nd Battalion Royal Norfolk Regiment displayed incredible bravery in the face of overwhelming odds. Join us as we delve into this poignant chapter of history, honouring those who made the ultimate sacrifice. The German invasion of France via the Low Countries began on May 10, 1940, as part of Blitzkrieg. Army Group A under Gert von Rundstedt advanced through southern Belgium and northeastern France, reaching the Meuse River by May 12th and crossing it that same evening. German forces swiftly pushed to the English Channel over the next week. The British 2nd Infantry Division, including the 4th Infantry Brigade, with battalions of the Royal Norfolks and Royal Scots, was tasked with delaying the German advance to allow the evacuation at Dunkirk. One German unit, the 3rd SS Division Totenkopf, led by Theodor Eicke, was heavily indoctrinated with Nazi ideology. Fiercely loyal and aggressive, the division had suffered higher casualties than other units. Their first major engagement of the war came during the Battle of France. Called to the front on May 17th, Totenkopf conducted mopping up operations near Cambrai. German forces reached the English Channel, but British counterattacks west of Arras on May 21st caused nearly 100 German casualties. Totenkopf was then ordered to Bethune, crossing the La Bassée River under fire on May 24th. The division retreated the next day to conserve tanks for the Dunkirk campaign and allowed the Luftwaffe to attack. On May 26, they'd recrossed the river, capturing Bethune after intense fighting, forcing the British to withdraw to a line between Locron and Le Paradis. The 2nd Battalion, the Royal Norfolks, and the 8th Lancashire Fusiliers were ordered to hold their positions in Riez-du-Vinage, Le Cronay-Malo, and Le Paradis to cover the BEF's retreat. On May 27th, the SS Division Totenkopf attacked Le Cronay-Malo at dawn. Despite stubborn resistance, the British were overrun after inflicting heavy casualties on the Germans, who lost 4 officers, 150 men, and sustained 480 wounded. Later that day, Totenkopf would advance on Le Paradis. Following the engagement at Le Cronay-Malo, C Company and HQ Company of the 2nd Royal Norfolks retreated to their headquarters, located on the outskirts of Le Paradis. The company commanders were informed via radio that their units were isolated and no reinforcements would arrive. As a result, the troops fortified positions around the farmhouse on the 506 Chemin du Paradis, the boundary between the Royal Norfolk Regiment and the adjacent 1st Royal Scots. The Norfolk's final communication with brigade headquarters at La Pinette occurred at 11:30. Despite overwhelming opposition and no support, they defended their position against the 14th Company, the 1st Battalion, of the 2nd SS Infantry Regiment until 5:15 p.m, when their ammunition was depleted. The Germans used mortars, tanks, and artillery during the assault, destroying the farmhouse and forcing the defenders to relocate to a nearby cowshed. During the battle, SS Standartenführer Hans Friedmann Goetze, commander of the Totenkopf Division's 3rd Regiment, was killed. With their position untenable, Major Lyle Ryder, brother of Robert Edward Dudley Ryder, ordered the 99 surviving Norfolks to surrender. The soldiers exited the cowshed under a white flag. As the road marked the boundary between the 2 British regiments, Ryder's men surrendered not to the company they had been fighting, but to SS Hauptsturmführer Fritz Knocklein's unit, which had been engaged with the Royal Scots. Evidence uncovered near Le Paradis in 2007 suggests that around 20 Royal Scots who surrendered to an SS unit may have also been executed in a separate massacre. The 97 soldiers who surrendered were marched to a barn down the Rue du Paradis by SS troops under the command of Hauptsturmführer Fritz Knocklein. Once there, 2 machine guns from No. 4 Machine Gun Group were set up. Without warning, the Germans opened fire, mowing down the unarmed prisoners. Private William O'Callaghan of Dereham in Norfolk later described the scene. "We were lined up, too deep, with our backs to the guns. They opened fire and cut us down like corn." His comrade, Private Albert Pooley from Southall, London, recalled lying among the dead, covered in blood, pretending to be dead, as bayonets pierced the bodies of those still alive. Private Pooley's account would be, "We turned off the dusty French road, through a gateway and into a meadow beside the buildings of a farm. I saw, with one of the nastiest feelings I have ever had in my life, 2 heavy machine guns inside the meadow, pointing at the head of our column. The guns began to spit fire. For a few seconds, the cries and shrieks of our stricken men drowned the crackling of the guns. Men fell like grass before a scythe. I felt a searing pain and pitched forward. My scream of pain mingled with the cries of my mates. But even before I fell into the heap of dying men, the thought stabbed my brain. If I ever get out of here, the swine that did this will pay for it. O'Callaghan and Pooley were the only two survivors, with O'Callaghan pulling Pooley alive from the sea of bodies. Crawling away under the cover of darkness, they sought refuge in a nearby pigsty, where a French farmer, Madame Diquin-Creton, found them. Risking her life, she provided them with food and water, hiding them from German patrols. On May 28th, a day after the massacre, an SS war correspondent attached to the Totenkopf division, Gunther Dahlken, recorded details in his journal. His report would say, "It was possible to look into the backyard from the road. The corpses in British uniform were lying in the yard near the buildings. They were lying in such a position that one can assume they were killed by machine gun bursts. It struck me at once that the dead soldiers were not wearing helmets, nor did they have any equipment on them. I took pictures of the dead bodies and the whole farm. At Thumb's request, these were to be placed at the disposal of the division. I believe I was already sitting there in the field when Thumb told me that in the field from which he had just returned, the equipment taken from the shot British soldiers was lying in a heap, from which he had come to the conclusion that a summary trial had taken place." News of the massacre spread to neighbouring German divisions, eventually reaching Erich Höppner, commander of the German forces in France. He disliked the SS, especially Eike, and was determined to have them dismissed if charges of mistreatment or murdering of prisoners could be brought. However, none of these investigations were ever successful. Regardless, many SS officers were appalled by the massacre. Some reportedly challenged Knockline to a duel, although none was ever fought. The Allies remained unaware of the massacre until the summer of 1943, when Pooley, having spent 3 years recovering from his injuries in a German hospital, was deemed medically unfit and repatriated. Initially, British authorities dismissed his account, finding it hard to believe that the German army could commit such atrocities against British troops. It was not until 1945, following the liberation of his prisoner of war camp, that Private O'Callaghan returned to the United Kingdom. His corroboration of Pooley's story led to an official investigation. In 1942, French authorities exhumed the bodies of the massacre victims, though only about 50 of the 97 individuals were positively identified. The remains were subsequently reburied in the churchyard at Le Paradis, which is now part of the Le Paradis War Cemetery, maintained by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. In 1970, a memorial plaque was installed on the barn wall where the massacre occurred, followed by a large memorial erected near the church. More recently, in 2021, a memorial stone was placed at Norwich Cathedral in Norfolk to honour the men who lost their lives in the massacre. After the war, the massacre at Le Paradis became one of the earliest war crimes investigated by the British. The testimonies of Pooley and O'Callaghan, combined with the forensic evidence, led to the arrest of Fritz Knockline. In 1947, at his trial, Knockline claimed he was following orders, but the court found him guilty. He was sentenced to death and executed by hanging. Despite Knockline's conviction, no other members of the SS Totenkopf division were prosecuted for their role in the massacre. The massacre at Le Paradis is a sobering reminder of the brutality of war and the atrocities committed in its name. By sharing stories like these, we honour those who served and ensure that their sacrifices are never forgotten. If you found this video informative, please like, share and subscribe to our channel for more untold stories from history. Let us know in the comments which events you'd like us to cover next. Thank you.